Hello everyone and welcome back to further testing with my Saturn mission in Kerbal Space Program 1.12 with Realism Overhaul. In the previous video on this mission, I had hit a conundrum because time warping randomly deleted my liquid hydrogen pretty precipitously, even though it shows no boil off, and it did not show any boil off at the mid-course correction. So why it tried to get rid of it is probably some weird thing with Kerbalism or some weird math situation. And so what I've done, as I said in the previous video, is to restore the stuff that was being gotten rid of, including too much of the water being removed because the recycler was not working properly during time warp. And that's basically because we need to use the top level of time warp in order to get anywhere, but everything starts to be inconsistent beyond this point. And Kerbalism itself, when you're following the mission, basically says that it can't time warp any faster, and the problem is it doesn't have very consistent track of things beyond that. So I've decided to just restore what I thought would be a good level to proceed with. I'm not going to take this as the definitive version of this mission. We have a lot of fixes to do, but I want to see what we can do with it. As we can see right now, we can capture around Saturn with this main ship, and with the Delta V that we have, assuming that that's all right. And so, let me focus on Saturn. We are still approaching the SOI boundary, in fact, so there might be some loss. Let me start time warping now. Well, okay. I might have to do another round of restoring the propellants, because I'll have to go to the tracking station and time warp another 158 days, but as you can see, we can get into some sort of situation here. That maneuver is not exactly where it ought to be, is it? Let me just get rid of that. Something threw that off a little bit. What we want is this maneuver. Well, I didn't want that much. About that much would suffice. Okay, so yeah, let me time warp another 158 days and see if all my hydrogen goes away again, or the water. I'm thinking going for Iapetus instead of Enceladus might be the plan here, since we are short of Delta V anyway. Okay, well, in the meantime, we have time warped about 80 days and it did not do any boil off. It did use some water, of course, but that's to be expected. I think that's about the amount of water I was expecting it to use, so that's not a problem. And we still have the same oxygen, liquid oxygen, I mean. Okay, we will go back to the tracking station and continue time warping. Okay, they're crossing Saturn's radiation belt. Uh-oh. Erhat Kerman has been exposed to intense radiation. Let's see here. Yeah, I should have been over there. 174% stress for Aldon. 53, 53, 50. Erhat, Izawig, and Tom at the moment. Well, now Tom's past 50. Okay. Now 67%. Uh-oh. You know, maybe the radiation... Look, I've put all the radiation shielding I can on the ship. Every little bit. And you know, there is a little bit of shielding lack on the reactor, but that's far away. On the habitat, we're full up. And well, just give me more ability to put shielding on the ship then, right? Oh no, they die! Okay, well, either I'm going to have to increase the effectiveness of the shielding on the ships, or I'm gonna have to increase how much shielding they let us put on the ships. So, I mean, there's no avoiding that. I'm intending to do a Saturn mission. I can't have them die. So, shielding efficiency is already at 93.3%. 100%? I mean, okay, well, I'm gonna have to backtrack a little bit. Okay, coming in with 100% effectiveness on the shielding. They've got 23 and 24% radiation so far. Aldon's got 169% stress. Once we get within the orbit of Iapetus, I'll save. Just in case I have to take some other mitigation technique, like going into the configuration file and rewriting things. 1.5 sieverts per hour. I mean, I don't know how much it would cost to capture just outside of that. It's probably a thing we could look at. But before we look at that, let me just see how the radiation is as we tumble along at this point, since I've increased the effectiveness of the shielding to 100%. Maybe we won't get any radiation at all, I don't know. And... oh, there we go. Extreme radiation. I don't think they're gonna last very long. We just need them to go through it once. No, they're not gonna survive. Yeah, there's gonna be perishment here. It's a little bit more effective. Fatality. Fatality. Okay, alright. I'm gonna restore the save from where I had before, and we are going to lift the orbit up a little bit first. Mind you, the radiation around Jupiter is supposed to be 1,000 times that around Saturn. Maybe I need to rewrite how much there is around Saturn. Let me just take a peek at what they have for Jupiter. Okay, well, I mean, it's got a lot of stuff. See, it says inner belt 3 sieverts per hour, outer belt 500 millisieverts per hour. I mean, it seems strange that Jupiter's radiation is famously stronger than Saturn's by orders of magnitude, and yet here our inner belt around Jupiter, which only covers Io, which famously you can't stand on for more than a few minutes, is 3 sieverts per hour, and it's tilted like that. But then when we get to Saturn, that's 2 sieverts per hour and more... oh, sorry, 1.5 sieverts per hour, but more solidly around everything. I mean, look, this covers all of the inner moons, and it's 1.5 sieverts per hour. That's not... I don't see any source saying that it's that strong. Well, looking at the configuration files, the situation gets curiouser and curiouser. This is the aerokerbalism configuration. It doesn't say anything about the radiation around the planets, but there's a separate radiation file. And here we have a Jovian field aligned at 9.6 degrees to rotational axis, as we saw it tilted. Radiation model Jupiter. And there's Jupiter 2. So we've got some, and in fact a special thing for Ganymede. Don't know what Bop is doing. But one peculiarity here in this file is that I don't see Saturn. I see a radiation model for Mercury and a radiation model for Jupiter and one for Earth. So yeah, I have no idea how to change that for the outer belt. I have no idea where in the configurations it has that, since nowhere in the configurations does it say Saturn at all. And Jupiter 2 sure doesn't work. And I have also no idea why it has a squiggly line next to 1.5, about 1.5 sieverts per hour, whereas the magnetopause has a delta. But okay, we're at the SOI entry boundary. I'm going to try to lift our orbit up. I don't know if we have enough delta V, I doubt it. But what else can we do? So, actually, let me get rid of the existing thing. Alright, that'll be outside of it. But what's capture gonna take? 1,800. I mean, if I planned ahead... Oh wait, that's... Oh yeah, no, that's fine. It's inside the magnetopause, but outside the outer belt. I still dispute the number for the outer belt, but let's make a deal. Let's make a deal. The deal is that I'll accept that for now since I have no idea how to change it. But I'm gonna trade that for the extra delta V. I'm just gonna add the delta V in so that we can do this. I'll just make it just enough to capture just like we had before, and then we'll proceed like that. So I'll just keep in mind in planning in the future that I'm gonna need about 2,000 to capture like this. That's still not too bad. But alright, we're going to go on and do what we can because I want to test other aspects of the mission out, and you know, now we know about the radiation, but I am sure not supportive of the current radiation number. Alright, well, I'm just going to use the nuclear engine for this one. We're gonna put some extra fuel back in anyway. Okay, that sets our orbit outside the outer belt. Alright, I basically just filled up one of these tanks. That gives us about the right amount. It gives us a little bit more potentially, but let me just go to the tracking station and time warp in and we can do the 1,800 and finally proceed on with this business. Alright, there's Saturn. We're very high over it. Miku warned me of this. Miku Singularity. Okay, selling fuel down. And ignition. I've got the ions on for no particular reason. It won't do much. Not in the time this burn is going to happen. So yes, I cheated extra fuel in, but that is because we want to test things further and get what numbers we can given the situation. Now, our next bit, the Enceladus lander gets in 29 days. That's into the SOI. You don't necessarily have to do anything at that point. Oh, actually, we still ran out of the hydrogen, huh? We're on ions now. Oh, great. Okay, fine. Keep capturing with the ions. Don't want too long in orbit. Alright, well that's probably the best we can do. 71 days out to Apoaps, this is still a long time. We need to tilt the orbit and everything. Still trying to get to Titan here. This is, of course, the... what used to be the Enceladus lander we're trying to get to Iapetus. Well, we probably need a refueler to come out to us long before we try to do anything else. Yeah, I'll just leave that be. Alright, they're hanging out around Saturn. At least they've arrived. But no Delta V, so something's gonna have to meet them. There's a lot of ammonia that's hanging out. Well, this time, even though I hadn't paid any attention to it, the Enceladus lander hasn't had any boil off since the numbers I took down at mid-course correction. So it's sort of random whether all the liquid hydrogen goes away or not, apparently. So that's great. We are now changing its mission parameters, though. Let's see if it can do the whole business with Iapetus. I need to get the scanner. I'm gonna cheat. We might as well just go ahead and cheat a few things here. I have the scanner around Enceladus. I'm just gonna move it over, cheat it over to Iapetus instead. Now, there's no reason for this not to brave the radiation around Saturn in order to capture cheaper. we'll keep doing that. But then it's going to boost up, correct its inclination, and then bring its orbit down. So we'll have enough to do that. 1,000, 1,200, 2,000. So that's pretty good. We have plenty left after that. Maybe we should rendezvous with the ship first. Give it some liquid oxygen. We've got some extra. Or maybe not. I'll think about that. First, we've got this all plotted. And I'll add an alarm for the periapsis burn to capture. Let's give ourselves 12 hours. But let me deal with the ISRU probe to scan Iapetus first. Alright, moving it on over. Got a lot of delta V as it is, though. Well, we're not getting a very good view of Iapetus. Let's see if we can perform orbital survey. Okay, we can. Okay, we've got some data here. Escape velocity from Iapetus is 573 meters per second. Let's just compare that to Enceladus to get an idea of how much bigger Iapetus is. Enceladus was 240, basically. So Iapetus is bigger. I don't think it'll cause a problem for our Enceladus lander to land on it, but it does have more gravity. Gravitational acceleration wise, yeah, it's got double. This basically got double. But I think we had enough margin on our Enceladus lander to deal with that. Our nuclear engine was overpowered for Enceladus anyway. I don't know if we've reserved enough delta V for it, though. So, ore-wise, well, that's an interesting pattern. Well, past 60%, we're looking at that patch up there. Otherwise, we could just go equatorial and that'll work. But if we really want the juicy ore, we'll go up there. Hydrates. Going for hydrates. It says 4.9. Where? Oh, hydrates are all at the South Pole. And it's like the cutoff is 0%, whatever that means. So I think we've got hydrate drills on right now. So we're going to have to try to go for the hydrates, but they're not exactly accessible. Or even though this says 4.9%, I don't know what the cutoff really means when it's 4.9%, but it doesn't seem great, right? Anyway, that's the situation. That's what Iapetus is like in this particular save. Remember, the resources get regenerated per save. So it's totally different. But it is biome dependent, so that's why it's that ring like that, because that's presumably another biome. Okay, activating RCS and turning towards the node. Got a long burn ahead of us because it is ion engines. Got this little bit of liquid hydrogen, which I might modify later. A good point was made regarding the water plan, in other words, carrying water and then splitting it. I'm sorry, I forgot who made the point in the comments. The problem is that we don't use the right ratio of hydrogen and oxygen that would result from splitting water. We carry some of our propellant like that, and that might save Kerbalism from getting rid of all of it. Really, we don't actually carry full tanks of hydrogen to Saturn anyway. We use most of the hydrogen to do the transfer burn. So it might work out anyway because we expect to have a relatively low amount of hydrogen over here. But it is true that we don't actually use the right ratio. Then again, right now, we could sure have used the extra hydrogen. So maybe it'd work out. Yeah, because we use the hydrogen for the burn to Saturn and we're not carrying it all the way, and we only carry a little bit all the way, maybe the splitting would work out. Okay, we definitely don't want to go any lower on the periapsis. Here come the rings. Okay, getting real close to Saturn here. Probably the radiation wouldn't be great for our instruments and such. And we're past periapsis, which is, not super. Still trying to capture here. Okay. And, well, numbers positive there. And we've captured. We don't want too long in orbit because then it's going to take too long to adjust. For now, I'm going to shut down there. Maybe we can do something with our mission ship. Well, here we got a separation of 478, which on these scales is not too bad. Consider that the intercept time is 335 days, though. We don't have a whole lot of time around Saturn right now. Maybe we shouldn't be so high up, but then that doesn't have much fuel to work with. So, speaking of which, is this a good thing to do? Well, let me see. We've got 13,851. If we switch to the main ship there, its capacity is 85,000. So we're not giving it a huge amount. We're giving it some, though. It's only got 124 and it gets 30 meters per second out of that. Maybe it can give the 6,000 hydrogen over to our lander. Well, we'll have to see about that. The Titan lander is coming in before a lot of this other stuff is going to happen. At least our first maneuver with the Enceladus lander is one that's helpful anyway. This first maneuver that's taking 836 boosts us up so that we are also at Iapetus level. So that's something we want anyway. So we can definitely do this, but it's in 117 days. That's still before the Titan lander. Our trip back has to start on year 37, day 151. So yeah, we're a little bit tight on time. We would arrive back at Earth at year 42, day 223. That's the plan. Of course, we're not getting back unless we can refuel our main ship. Okay, boosting up. Okay. Well, I'm not too sure we want to do the rendezvous with the main ship yet, but we've got a closest approach distance of 29 kilometers according to that. Right there. And we would use 960 meters per second in order to match speeds with it. Or we could just go to Iapetus instead. We would still need to correct 7 degrees of inclination there. But let's just see. So if we did Iapetus, we do a correction like that. About 150. And then we'd pull down eventually, possibly getting Iapetus's help. And that takes another 800. So, I mean, we've got 10,000 sitting here, and we need 1,000 to get to Iapetus. So, that doesn't seem like much. So, we could deliver stuff to the main ship. At least, maybe a few thousand liquid oxygen. I wonder how much delta V we have with the liquid hydrogen right now. Only 188, so there's no way we could land on Iapetus right now, but that's partly because we're heavy with the oxygen. But picking up some hydrogen from the ship sounds like a good idea. I don't think it'll be enough though, and the ship only has a few thousand liquid hydrogen to give us. Anyway, let's try to do the rendezvous. It'll be fancy. So, right ahead of when we meet up with it, I've got a node there. And we'll add a timer. But we need to get the Titan lander in. I think it'll capture before we need to worry about the rendezvous here. But yeah, we're not going to make it back like this, but it'll be interesting to see how much time it takes for all the operations that we're going to do around Saturn, so that next time I'll plan correctly for how much time we need to hang out around Saturn. I didn't know that specifically until we try it out like this, so yeah, it's going to take a little bit. So now we have to capture the Titan lander into orbit around Saturn, and it has less delta V than it had before, though more than it had just a moment ago before I restored some of it, because unlike the other missions, it did have boil off along the way. Okay, really close to Saturn here. Rings, Saturn shadow. Still valiantly trying to capture here. Turns out my capture burn was a little bit late. And also not good enough. Well, that's disappointing. Okay. Thought I had enough delta V, but apparently not. Well, this is not optimal. But I'll capture it anyway. I gotta use the lander's engine. Okay, so 683 up there, 1,855 here. So yeah, but of course it won't have enough to actually take off from the surface. It'd have enough to land, just not get back up again. So it'd need the refueling before it gets to do that. But we can get it over to Titan. That we can do. We were supposed to get it over with the fuel. Anyway, this first burn is going to be in a bit, and we have to worry about the Enceladus lander first. Well, the Iapetus lander, really. So let me just add an alarm, since it's going to be with the main fuel. That's going to maybe boil off by the time. Well, I mean, yeah, I don't know what the rules are, why it decides to boil off here. It definitely has boil off, but it also has oxygen depletion for no apparent reason. So that's weird. Maybe it's O2 pressure control. It's the O2 pressure controller. Do we need that on right now? Okay, O2 pressure controller was running. We really need nitrogen pressure control, not O2. We're carrying the nitrogen for that. So it looks like we've got the wrong pressure controller here is the problem. Okay. Oh, I guess we don't have boil off. The hydrogen and oxygen is being used by the fuel cell. Okay, the hydrogen and oxygen is being used by fuel cells. Well, see, I probably didn't think about that properly. I don't know if we're gonna have enough with the fuel cells running over the course of 150 days. The stage before it was supposed... We probably had the fuel cells running even though we shouldn't have had. Because the stage before it has a nuclear reactor, we didn't need the fuel cells running, but they probably were running, taking our hydrogen and oxygen. So... that's sad. That's unfortunate. But anyway, probably the Titan landing is not going to happen this time. We'll see how much consumption we have. I mean, I don't think I can turn off the fuel cells and still have this working. For now though, I've captured the missions into orbit around Saturn, and I'm looking to rendezvous the Enceladus lander with the main ship, but I'll do that in the next video and then we'll see where it goes from there. How far can I get this? I'm not entirely sure. Remembering that technically the journey back is supposed to happen on year 37, day 151. We really don't have that much time. It's 11 days until the rendezvous, then we can refuel this a little bit, but then technically the lander has to get to Iapetus, has to land on Iapetus, refuel on Iapetus, and then bring that fuel up to the main ship again. Now the main ship could adjust its orbit somewhat to help out because the lander is bringing some oxygen to it now. But anyway, probably many changes need to be made in the mission if it's actually going to work the way it's supposed to. I'm going to leave it here for now. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do press like. If you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them in the comments section below, and I'll see you next time.